What is up, Titans fans? Season 4, Episode 4, Super Mart, the return of Deathstroke, but maybe not in the way some of you may have been hoping or thinking. But what I like to call this episode is kind of the beginning of the end. As you can tell with what's going on with Sebastian, now he's with the Titans. As of the end of last episode, long story short, obviously Mother Mayhem almost got him to say those 3 words, but Superboy grabbed him just in time. And this episode, being the beginning of the end, is also where we learn quite a bit of clarity behind Mother Mayhem's backstory, also a reveal that they gave away in that trailer. This is what I mean. I kind of went on about that for quite a bit in that very spoilery trailer breakdown. But in this episode, episode 4, you learn that Sebastian is in fact Raven's brother, and Mother Mayhem's son. And they gave that away. They gave that away well before episode 4 even came out. But I'm going to stop rambling. Let's get into this breakdown. Some very interesting stuff to discuss. And of course, I would love your input down in that comment section. Any theories you have going ahead? I mean, after all, we've only got a couple of episodes left until episode 6, which is where we go on break for the rest of December, and Titan Season 4 won't return with episode 7 until, I guess, sometime next year. It could be January, could be February, maybe even March. We're gonna have to wait and see there. But of course, I will keep you updated. Do consider subscribing to make sure you don't miss out on those updates and future breakdowns. So right at the beginning, this was super interesting because we see May Bennett back in 1996, a very different version of herself, and they didn't outright confirm this location, but I believe this is the Daily Planet. I could be wrong about that. I did like the intro song, Season of the Witch. We see May Bennett heal like this dying plant in this flower pot, and we see her boss being an absolute dick to her. And essentially he goes back in his office. She's getting a bit anxious. She can hear him bitching about her, and I feel like due to her powers that are untamed at this point, because they did make quite a bit of a point to show that they can be cultivated through the organization, it seems that in this moment she unintentionally or somewhat intentionally, subconsciously made him jump out the Daily Planet window. So that guy met his end. And then we see her in the bar, and this is where we get some creepy organization guy come up to her. And I am wondering if this is Adamson from season 1. I'm probably showing a picture on screen right now. I haven't seen season 1 in a while, but he does seem familiar. But I did look up the cast, and I don't think he's been in it before, but it could be obviously a younger version of a character like Adamson. But he shows her the card for the organization, and on the back it says Azarath, Metreon, and Zinthos, and he says, say them and you're done. Now I do wonder exactly in the Titans iteration what it means when you say these words. I feel like because they haven't clearly shown what it actually does when you say it, I'm sure we'll get an explanation about that. But for now, I guess once you say those 3 words, just like how Mother Mayhem tried to get Sebastian to say them at the end of last episode, I guess then you have somewhat of a link to Trigon. You've kind of low-key been indoctrinated, or just kind of signed a contract, I suppose. I know that in the Teen Titans show, obviously Raven says these words to kind of tap into a darker, deeper magic of hers, but I guess on this show, and that could be eventually what Raven says in this show after all of this threat is said and done, but for now, I guess once you say them, it means you've signed up. This is when we pick up with the Titans. We have Sebastian just kind of a bit creeped out, being a bit of a loner by the fire. We have Dick and Corey talking about what's been going on. Corey decides to fill Dick in on her Elko vision that she had last episode when she was kind of frozen in stone. When the red moon comes, her fight truly begins, basically foreshadowing how important Corey is this season to become the warrior she was always destined to be. But with a lot of Dick Grayson lines this episode, he really doesn't believe in visions. He just thinks it's a fairy tale story later on with that book, and I think he's gonna somewhat learn at some point in time that maybe there is a bit more to them. Meanwhile, with the other Titans in the bus, I enjoyed the interaction here. Jinx is asking if they have any Marmite. That is a woman after my own heart. I love Marmite on toast. Let me know if you also enjoy that. But also, this episode, we have Jinx laying into Superboy quite a bit, trying to get under his skin about Superman being weak to magic. I think this is the writer's way of also telling the general audience in the show that magic is a weakness for Kryptonians. Maybe not everybody knows about that, which is why Superboy can be somewhat underpowered this season when he is quite a powerful character, to the point of where you can often think in the writing, why doesn't he just do this, this, and this? It would just solve that problem, which is why this threat of the Church of Blood is a good, formidable match. Then Raven decides to go over to Sebastian, brings him some food, and long story short here, he tells her that she wanted him to say these 3 words, Mother Mayhem that is, and she's like, okay, so what words are these? And he begins to say it, and Raven says the 2nd word, and she just about stops him once again from saying the 3rd word. Now, just before that, he does say it makes him feel something strange, and it is obviously just like what we were talking about a minute ago. It kind of has some inner unlocking potential, like when May Bennett said it at the bar and that flashback, albeit she wasn't directly linked to Trigon then, but as we know, Sebastian in this episode, as it's revealed, is quite literally the son of Trigon. So obviously these 3 words, Azarath, Metreon, and Zinthos, if you say them and you're the son, and they possibly establish some kind of connection link to Trigon, then for him to say it, it would make him feel something strange, and that's probably why when he says it, there's a little bit of almost lust in his voice and in his face as he's beginning to complete those 3 words, because it's really going to unlock this hidden, darker nature to him that even he isn't quite aware of right now, other than what's been teased in episode 1 in that mirror when he saw that like bloody version of himself, which was a really cool shot of Joseph Morgan doing a bit of a Joker smile there. So she goes to Corey and Dick, fills them in on this, tells them that she asked them to join the organization, wanted him to say the words. They're like, but there's no one left at the asylum, because obviously that was the last time they properly encountered the organization when they burned it down. Dick Grayson also burned his Robin armor in that episode, but as we find out this episode, they've nicely connected it all the way back then, and where there was a place in the asylum where the fire didn't quite reach. And so, since obviously there's quite a bit of signs that the organization is still around in some way, shape, or form, and they've linked the Azarath, Metreon, and Zinthos lines to Mother Mayhem, thus the organization, why don't we take another look? So we're back in the bus, and this is where we have Tim, obviously being a bit of a newcomer, asking, okay, what the hell's going on? What happened in season 1? They fill him in, and I also feel like this is filling in fans who haven't watched previous seasons, that the asylum was run by the organization, and it was Raven's dad's cult. And that is when Sebastian asks, who is Trigon? And, you know, all the music just stops, and there's a bit of tension, and Raven explains how Trigon's a demon of inter and extra dimensional origin. Corey goes on to kind of explain how powerful this dude is, even from his birth, saying that at birth he killed his own mother, which was Raven's grandmother. Before his first birthday, he ruled an entire planet, and at the age of 6, he destroyed his first planet. And then, obviously, as we saw at the end of season 1 and the very beginning of season 2, he was about to annihilate planet Earth, and that is when Raven basically yeeted him back through the interdimensional portal, and ever since then he's been locked in his extra dimensional kind of place. But obviously Mother Mayhem through Sebastian, and then with the Blood Moon, as you can probably tell, they're trying to bring him back. So going quite back into those season 1 roots here, but just going through a new avenue rather than Raven, the new prophet, as very established in this episode. The prophet that wasn't actually a part of the prophecy, if that even makes sense, is Sebastian, ultimately to be realized as Brother Blood. And so this is when we arrive at where the asylum was when it burned down, but it's now turned into a super Mart, basically a Walmart. Like, to put it very bluntly, it doesn't appear on Dick's GPS. It seems to be like a low-key place. People do shop in, but also as a front, I suppose, for the organization, because they have those undead people a little bit later on, of which I definitely want to talk about, because I have a few things I want to say about that. We have Gina say to her, you're playing with fire, letting them go in there, and she's like, well, we have to get Sebastian to learn his story. They find this little hatch, Superboy lasers it, and they go in this little hidden area. At this point in that conversation between Mother Mayhem and Gina, we have Gina also say that they're all in the story, but the Tamaranian might not like her part. It's already written, they can't change their fate. And then they say, we did, but that's because we're stronger. Now, that's also a foreshadowing of how, even though we get some fate of how the Titans are meant to die, you know, Starfire is a very strong part in this, and, you know, as Sebastian says later, like, she dies, you all die and everything, it does also foreshadow that if they could change their fate, Mother Mayhem and Gina, then you can bet your ass that the Titans can as well in some shape or form. And so, you know, as I'm looking at my bullet points here, this is when we get a moment I'm a bit iffy on. So we have Mother Mayhem quite literally say, we have old friends who have been waiting for this day. When I say the word, they will rise up and fight for us. Hounds of Hell. So it was this epic moment. Hounds of Hell, it's time. And instead of going for some gruesome Church of Bloody kind of zombie-esque, you know, they said Hounds of Hell. Instead, they grab a bunch of tools and, you know, gear off the Walmart shelf, to put it bluntly, and gear up that way. And I have to say it is a bit underwhelming. I'm just being really candid here. I'm giving a bit of criticism for a show that this season's meant to be very Church of Bloody, very gruesome. They have delivered on that in certain areas, and this episode they did do quite a few things like the chainsaw and whatnot. But just to be a bit critical here, my feedback is these are meant to be Hounds of Hell as she described them, zombies as Jinx said later, but instead they just come out like underpaid retail workers striking at their employer. So, you know, I know that sounds a bit harsh, but really is. My only guess as to why they didn't get the makeup department to like go over every last person, because there was quite a few extras obviously for those zombies when they were fighting them later on, is because this was shot, I guess, during pandemic protocols. Also, it would have taken a lot of effort, but if that was the reason, then I argue that the effort should have been put in, because it does just come, you know, when you say Hounds of Hell and then they turn out to be just retail workers taking garden shears and a football helmet and whatnot, it's just a bit underwhelming, to say the least. So this is when the Titans come across this room that is clearly meant to imprison people. You see like a cage or a prison bars, you see chains on the floor, a muzzle, and Sebastian says that this was her room, and that's because he found a photo on the floor of Mother Mayhem and Gina, and she says this is when she was young. She doesn't know who Mother Mayhem is, but Gina, it turns out that she was his neighbor from across the hall, so they've obviously been monitoring him ever since they've escaped back in 2019. But technically, Gina could have been monitoring him ever since before 2019 when she broke Mother Mayhem out, because obviously Sebastian was taken away from her many years before that, so maybe Gina did keep tabs on him as he grew up as well. Now, this is when Corey finds something. It's kind of this creepy fairy tale as she explains it. It is a bit hard for me to make out. Raven does say, oh, this could be me, you know, the daughter and Trigon or whatever, but when she says this is all of us dead, I mean, Starfire looked like Starfire, but we saw like this old person with like a beard there. I mean, I don't really, maybe I'm being stupid because my review copy is literally 720p, so when I see this before you guys, it's not as clear crystal HD as what you may be watching on HBO Max. But either way, you know, the story is that is to be taken from this is that it foretells the Titans dying. In this moment, we get a little bit of a flashback to that explosion of the asylum in season 1, and Dick acknowledges that the fire probably broke down all the security. We tried to get rid of them, but in turn, we let her out. But this is when Tim finds something significant, but first, let's go to the other flashbacks of the episode. So we see May Bennett in 1997, 1 year later from the flashback we saw earlier of her in the bar, and we see her eating some strawberries that taste positively trigonic. We have that guy again, just saying more creepy, culty things, saying he tastes everything you taste. He's noticed you two in particular. He'd like to meet both of you. He's never met any of the other girls before. So she says she'll go. This is where we get another flashback to 1 month later, and essentially we have all the women blindfolded over this pit. And to prove your love, your undying love for Trigon, you have to prove your conviction and let him catch you. And that's when those two, I guess really May Bennett, was the first to basically just dip down there. Now, I don't know if they really did get caught. I don't know if this was clear enough. Did they just fall and then grab the ladder? Or did they fall and hit the floor but maybe not get as much damage because Trigon did kind of catch them? The whole time climbing that ladder, Jean is like, oh, I can't do this. And May's being really nice, just encouraging her, saying, oh, no, you can do it. Just keep looking up. And he's like, do you think he'll be there? I want to be his queen. There can only be one. And so she elbows May Bennett back down. What a bitch. Meanwhile, after this, she's getting prepared for this kind of wedding ceremony looking thing. And she stands there waiting and smiling. That's when May Bennett comes walking back in the room. And she apologizes. Of course, you only say sorry when you find out she's alive. I feel like May Bennett's being way too forgiving, though, because she's like, you are not yourself. Mr. Dude walks back in and says that May Bennett had heart over Gina. And that's when he offers her a drink of blood. And she drinks it and she kind of holds her stomach. She says that he's here. This is symbolic of her holding her womb. And I guess getting little Sebastian in there through drinking blood of Trigon. I really don't know. It's kind of similar to season 1. You don't really see Trigon until the very end in his pure form, that is. So this season, they're referring to Trigon. I guess this dude might have a link to Trigon. Somehow gets a drink from Trigon, but you don't ever really see Trigon until we will, I guess, see Trigon. And so this is when we cut back to the Titans listening to these tapes. May Bennett is giving birth. They're still listening to the tapes, and she gives birth to a boy. And this is when they're taking the boy away. They say, sorry, May, the prophecy is well known. The chosen one must be a girl. This is obviously going back to Raven and how she was technically meant to go hand in hand with Trigon and absolutely decimate everything, which is when we get them listening to the tape of 18 years later. Literally 18 years Mother Mayhem has been in this muzzle, chained up. You know, she could go back with the others if she renounces blasphemy, because she's been very insistent ever since Sebastian was taken away from her as a baby that her son is the prophet, but he needs time to grow. He will ascend under the blood moon to join his father. His power will have no equal, and together they will take the world. And this is when they release the snake on her, but she keeps calling out the name Sebastian, and then this is when the reveal was done, which is again why I was a bit frustrated why in the heck that was given away in that trailer, because I'm sure not every single one of you realized that Sebastian was Raven's brother if you hadn't watched that trailer, that is. This is double, triple confirmed by the mark that both Raven and Sebastian have around about here on their shoulder. And obviously Sebastian is just creeped out by this, absolutely creeped out, as any one of us would be, just working a night shift at a job, and it's just like now you've been thrust into a world of destiny. This creepy woman is after you. You feel some kind of underlying power when you start to say Azorath, Metreon, and now apparently you're destined to be a killer. But Gar says, thanks to Gar, that they only need to keep Sebastian alive for 8 hours because that's when the blood moon will expire, which is why I call this episode the beginning of the end, right? Because clearly, you know, if they keep him safe for 8 hours, it will all be over. But lo and behold, that's probably not going to happen, because otherwise the show would stop right here. Around about this time as well, we get some more flashbacks to 2019. Gina comes in and saves May Bennett. And at this point, the Titans are trying to make their exit from this location, but this is when the zombies come in. And obviously, I don't want to repeat everything I said earlier. I just felt it was a bit underwhelming. Felt like they could have done more to make him creepy. One thing I will say is, even though Starfire's powers did nothing to them, which is fair enough, I guess, they're undead, this is one of the only occasions of where I felt like Superboy could have done his overpowered thing and literally, I mean, he's Superboy, right? Granted, he's not as powerful as Superman. He could have zoomed around there like 100 miles per hour and flattened everyone at any second. This is one of the few instances this season, or the only instance so far, where Superboy's powers are a bit overpowered, but they deliberately don't do anything with him when they could have done something, because he could have literally torn everyone's heads off right there and then. But he tosses people around. Like, I still really enjoy that, don't get me wrong. I love where he kind of bowling balled one of them and a bunch of zombies just fell over. But obviously, he could have done a lot more, so it's a bit hard to believe that he didn't, just in a bit of a critical perspective there. This is when Jinx says, their heads, guys, you need to take off their heads. So we see Raven chainsaw one of them, and for those of you who are loving the gore this season, this would have been right up your street. And this is when zombie Deathstroke arrives. So this is why I said to people, and I didn't want to bum people out, I just wanted to try and set expectations to not get people massively disappointed. It is really cool hearing the Deathstroke theme again. This does confirm that he died in season 3. There were rumors, and I believe basically there were other drafts that they were thinking of kind of keeping him around maybe, but now this solidifies that Deathstroke did die. He didn't wake up in a hospital. He didn't wake up in prison or somewhere else. He did die. So he's one of the Hounds of Hell. And yeah, it was fun, but I'm a bit concerned that through showing him in the trailer, some people might have got their hopes up massively. Obviously, they didn't have to spend a bunch of money on this because they didn't get S.I. Morales back in. They didn't even need to spend money on him voicing lines because he's a zombie. So it's very easy for them to get the Deathstroke armor back and just put a stunt double in the suit. Superboy got shanked in that moment because, again, magic. He is weak to magic, and that is why his skin could be penetrated with Deathstroke's knife, and that really screwed Connor up there and then, and he needed to get back. And so towards the end of the episode, we have a zombie Deathstroke thinking that he's taken Sebastian, but really it was Jinx using her magic to look like Sebastian, and she completely takes out Deathstroke, takes his gun to sell it, and I guess Deathstroke is just going to stay there dead in the car. I mean, if you want to nitpick a bit further, you could probably ask, like, where did Deathstroke come from? What happened to his body after his daughter, Ravager, killed him in the alleyway? So did he walk? You know, just don't ask questions with that. But I do feel a bit bad that the Deathstroke is just there, just sat in a car now, just dead, if you know what I mean. So now we have the Titans back at Star Labs, and the idea, right, is to, you know, Sebastian needs to be protected for 8 hours. And Corey's like, are you absolutely sure this place can't be breached? Which is when we get another cool reference to 2 very big DC characters. And he says, well, Superman and Constantine tried to break in, and neither of them could. Now, I wonder if, you know, A, why did they try break in? Did they just try and break in to test the defenses and they weren't capable? Or did they actually try and break in under some other reason? I would love to know your thoughts there. Is there a comic story that I'm not thinking of and where maybe they would have done something like this together? But that is something to think about. And I'm going to get into some thoughts I have in this next episode. Again, I don't want to give anything away, but you can probably tell that, you know, otherwise the season would end here if the next 8 hours went smoothly. It's just if Superman and Constantine couldn't even breach this, yeah, there's a few things I have to say about next episode. And we have Superboy at the same time going to the toilet and throw up a snake. Now, I do, again, I know it may sound like I'm nitpicking quite a bit, but as you guys know, I'm a huge Titans fan. But to be the best reviewer I can be, I always have to look at things comprehensively. This isn't an attack on anyone's personal fandom for Titans. You know, I always remove my bias and praise it when it needs praise, and also criticize it if I see some things in the writing that are a bit convenient. So I do wonder why he didn't just laser the snake in this moment. It doesn't really add up to me. You could argue that maybe his power wasn't capable of generating a heat vision in that moment because of his wound, but at the same time, it's not like they explain that to us, so that snake could be coming back to bite them in the ass, quite literally, next episode, but that's also seen in the trailers. And with Gar making sure that Superboy is okay, maybe there's something else going on there. Can't really get into that, but I don't think that something else going on there would have technically prevented him from heat visioning that snake in this moment, because clearly Superboy Connor, you know, was obviously himself. He was bewildered. He was like, okay, so what the hell was that? Why did I just throw a snake up? But at the same time, clearly they're trying to, you know, foreshadow that, okay, why is Gar like, you know, you sure you're okay, Superboy? And Superboy's like, yeah, bright as rain, but there could be something else going on there. So overall, you know, I enjoyed this episode. I did have, I feel like, a few issues with it, more so than what I had in previous episodes, just in terms of what I've already said with the criticisms. I feel like they could have done a much better job with making these hounds of hell more literally hounds of hell. You know, they don't have to be dogs or CGI. I'm not saying that, but maybe some more practical effects, even if on just a few of them. Deathstroke is definitely going to be something up in the air for quite a few fans, I imagine, but I see it in like a few ways. Obviously, if you bring in Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, you have to think about, okay, well, how the hell are they going to solve this problem if he was alive? You know, he was the main villain for season 2. Why wouldn't he try and get revenge on the Titans? How would that not split up the story in all of these different avenues and, you know, areas when they've got the Church of Blood to worry about? Like, how the hell is Slade going to be utilized there? That would just overcomplicate things way more than I think just the initial fan desires just want. If you think about it for a minute, all they could really do is just do something simple like this. But do you feel like if they could only do something simple, should they have even done it, given that he was kind of just a very short undead zombie appearance? I enjoyed the Mother Mayhem flashbacks and the context there. That's certainly interesting to know about, how she was indoctrinated into the organization, how she had a son. Obviously, that's Sebastian. You can understand the relationship there more now as to why she wants Sebastian. She believes he is the prophet and will be united with his father Trigon to basically take over the world. So you can understand how and why Sebastian is significant, and just why the Church of Blood, aka also Mother Mayhem, has been going after him this whole time. But also what's intriguing with this beginning of the end, as I've been saying, is just what is it? What is it exactly that is going to make Sebastian go from this guy who, yes, clearly they're teasing a bit of a, you know, lustful, other subconscious, darker side to himself as soon as he starts saying the magical words, but what makes his surface value innocent man who seems to be well-intentioned go to the lengths of becoming truly booming in the probably stronger episodes at the back of this season when he's being Brother Blood. And Brother Blood's not going to be some forgiving, softy. He's going to be brutal, I imagine, which is going to lean into, I guess, Joseph Morgan's truly villainous acting traits, which is arguably his strongest stuff. So his strongest stuff is yet to come. Not that I'm saying anything we've seen with him so far has been bad. I'm just saying, like, it's going to be going into overdrive. And I just want to understand myself, even with what I've seen already, what actually makes him tick. Like, tick, 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 into going from, okay, I want to change the world of my game, to, okay, to change the world, I have just heard in a Titans van that Trigon, my dad, even though at this point he didn't know that he was his dad, but now, he's got the context. My dad killed a planet when he was 6. He tried to kill this planet and take over the world. And I'm going to subscribe to that? Obviously, somehow, he's going to have to get his mind changed in such a way where his mother, May Bennett, Mother Mayhem, is going to have to truly convince him that your dream of changing the world can be realized. But I just hope that the show does a good job in somehow explaining and conveying to a nice character, Sebastian Sanger, seemingly nice, that to change the world, to make people not feel alone, for some reason, we need to burn it all. And I'm not casting massive doubt there. I just feel like that's going to take quite a undertaking of story and character decisions and perspective for Sebastian to succumb to such a dark deed that he needs to help bring to fruition. So guys, what did you think of Titans Season 4, Episode 4, Super Mart? Let me know your thoughts down in that comment section. Other than that, links as always are in the description. Discord, Instagram, Twitter, do follow me there. I'm very active in those places. Would be good to see you there. All that's left to say is just thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. If you did like, hope you did. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you fellow Titans in the next video. Goodbye.